Thank you for joining us today for our 5th session of CEC 15's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series. I'm Camille Casaretti, President of Brooklyn's District 15 Community Education Council, and I'm excited to be hosting this series of 8 information sessions that allow our school community members and incoming families to learn about efforts to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in our elementary, middle, and high schools. We've had some date changes for the next few sessions, so I'll drop the schedule in the chat so that you may adjust your calendars and save these last few dates. Hold on a minute. I'm sorry, trying to find the chat here. Okay, here's the link to the session topics. So at our last session, we discussed redirection and our ability to change patterns. We learned about some ways to reduce anxiety and talked about programs that can assist us in staying healthy and sane during the pandemic. We talked about how to remain positive and overcome obstacles by changing our thought patterns, and we discussed the virtues and values of spending time with our families. Later tonight, CEC 15 is hosting a family cooking workshop at 5:15. We'd love to have you join us, and you could still register through this link, which I will drop in the chat again. We'll be making veggie tacos with one of our after-school vendors allergic to salad, so it's very exciting. Please do join and share the information with your school communities. Today, we're going to be talking about cultural diversity. No matter where you live in District 15 or throughout New York City, you are interacting with and establishing relationships with people who all have cultures. Culture typically refers to a group or community which shares common experiences that shape the way its members understand the world. It includes groups that we're born into, such as race, national origin, gender, class, or religion. It can also include a group that we join or become a part of. For example, each school district has a culture, and each school has a different kind of culture. When we think of culture this broadly, we realize we all belong to many cultures all at the same time. Culture is a strong part of people's lives. It influences their views, their values, their humor, their hopes, loyalties, and their worries and fears. So when you're interacting with people and building relationships with them, it helps to have some perspective and understanding of their culture. And although there are many different cultures, it's important to remember how much we have in common. People see the world very differently, but they know what it's like to wake up in the morning and look forward to the day. We're all human beings. We all love deeply, want to learn, have hopes and dreams, and have experienced pain and fear. At the same time, we can't pretend our cultures and differences don't matter. We can't just gloss over differences and pretend they don't exist, wishing we could all be alike. And we can't pretend that discrimination doesn't exist. We know how important it is to learn about each other. The Department of Education recently implemented a culturally responsive sustaining education curriculum to help our students and staff know each other better. When we're able to learn about each other, we are creating a more compassionate and understanding society. You can take some time after the session to review the culturally responsive curriculum scorecard designed by the NYU Metro Center that helps parents, teachers, students, and community members determine the extent to which their schools' English language arts curricula are culturally responsive. This is a great exercise to do with your school leadership teams. Just drop that in the chat as well so you have the link. Okay. We're very lucky today to have quite a few speakers with us who are going to share stories about cultural diversity in District 15 and how we're bringing families and school communities closer together. Our first speakers are from Superintendent Scopp's office, Maggie Desir, who's the D15 Field Support Liaison, and Gina Keller, our Diversity Coordinator. They're going to be joined by Matthew Brogini, the Senior Director of Middle School Admissions at the DOE. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you for having us. And I think I just wanted to say thank you also for even having these Monday afternoon sessions. I think they're a great idea. And I think it's beneficial for everybody to be involved in these conversations, and the more the merrier. So thank you, Camille and CEC 15 for that. So we're just going to take some time, and our apologies, and I'm talking as a team, me and Gina right now, our apologies for anything we're saying that perhaps some of you guys have heard 1,000 times, but I think a lot of this needs to be restated anyway. And for those who have not heard it, well, then you need to be hearing it. So thank you for that. And thank you for your patience for those who've heard me speak literally 1,000 times. So, so District 15, I see Anita's on the call, Superintendent Scopp is on the call. And Anita likes to say often that District 15 is a true microcosm of New York City, and it's an absolute fact. New York City is a melting pot, and you know it's a melting pot with, you know, a bubble here and a bubble there. So District 15 is amazing in the sense that I don't know if there's one culture that exists in New York City that does not exist in District 15. And so, you know, while most data sources say that they separate the races, which is a social construct, but that's neither here nor there. Our race is into like 5, right? So they say Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, other. Sometimes they'll give us a biracial or a multiracial, but District 15 is so much more than that. And so not just in the past couple of years, for a while, District 15 has tried to acknowledge and embrace that and look at that as a strength and to work towards equity for everybody. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what District 15 has done, what we're trying to do, what we plan to do as a district. I want to start with, I can share my screen. Hold on. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So, so I'm going to start with the mission statement for District 15 that was created by Superintendent Scopp and her team years back. And I hate reading PowerPoints, but just in case you haven't heard it. So we as educators in District 15 believe that each child is born with an innate capacity to love learning. We further believe that it is our calling to nurture this capacity by ensuring that every child is provided with an educational experience that is meaningful, innovative, enriched, and grounded in uncompromising standards of academic achievement. We ensure their scholastic, social, and professional success. To this end, we unite as a collaborative community that embraces our diversity and is committed to the equitable allocation of resources and opportunities. We respectfully welcome all students, parents, and constituents to join us as partners in striving to guarantee that we succeed in making this vision a reality for all of our students. That is our mission statement. That was created long before the diversity plan was created, and just kind of worked together so that we can try to accomplish that. So in terms of what District 15 has done in terms of acknowledging and promoting the idea that cultural differences actually bring us together and make us stronger, there are a few things that District 15 has done. The first thing, we actually have a district-wide diversity committee that was formulated in 2016. That diversity committee sought to kind of like acknowledge the shifting demographic landscape in District 15. And so it started out as actually an informal way to have an honest conversation about how to best address the challenges, as well as highlight the advantages of these changes in our communities. And we try to be a really diverse committee in terms of having not just one voice or one voice represented. It's interesting because one of the challenges is with diversity committees by itself is how diverse is it? Because you have a group of people who want to speak, and there's a whole subgroup of people who are like, I'm just going to keep to myself, but their voice needs to be heard as well. So that we also included all stakeholders, administrators, staff, parent coordinators, parents, social workers, guidance counselors, parent coordinators, all the stakeholders in the schools. We tried to do that in 2016, and we're still doing it now. We did change the name from Diversity Committee. Now it's fancy, it's the Equity Congress. And we're still going on now with that. We also had the, I just want to say one of the goals when I said the big long mission, and I think we simplify it in our office. You'll hear from Brenda Diaz later on, but she takes all the calls, all the wonderful calls from fabulous engaged parents who call 311 or call our office directly with complaints, mostly complaints, a lot of compliments. And our goal, I think, is when we get a call and it says that any student was marginalized in any way or made to feel any type of way based on how they look, where they're from, or who they are, that we should feel comfortable saying, no, that's a mistake. That must have been a misunderstanding, because that wouldn't happen in our schools. So that's our goal, to not have to get a call and say, oh, well, which school, right? We should be able to say, no. If it's a District 15 school, that wasn't happening. That's our goal. We're not there yet, but we are working toward it. So we also have the diversity plan, which Matt will talk about the quantitative, and I'm pretty sure everybody on this call is well versed in diversity plan. It's a 100 plus page plan that talks about inclusion and inclusion and and equity throughout admissions. So Matt's going to talk more about that. As you know, the two main points were to eliminate screenings for all of our middle schools, as well as establish a set aside of 52% for certain categories of students that were underrepresented in some of our schools and overrepresented in others, to make it more equitable across the board for District 15. So that was creating admissions priority, but I'll leave that to Matt. Then we also had the Youth Equity Congress, which we established in 2018, which I feel comfortable saying is one of my favorite parts of my job, because we actually get to talk to the kids. And so we would meet once a month. The principal would select a student from their school to represent themselves at the Equity Congress, and we had conversations. It was really, really fun. We have amazing kids. I mean, New York City has amazing kids. I'm just bragging about District 15 because that's where I work. The kids are fantastic, and we talked about everything from Brown versus Board of Education to segregation. We try to incorporate everybody's culture. And once again, when I gave the ask for members to come to the Youth Equity Congress, I tried to be purposeful in terms of having a wide range of perspectives. And I think we were successful in that. And I was trying to find a picture so you can see our wonderful Youth Equity Congress, but I realized I didn't get all the parents' consent, so I can't show it anyway. So that's that. In terms of training for staff, we also asked that and arranged for staff members in all of our schools to be trained in border crossers, as well as out of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, the RULER training. And for those who don't know, RULER is an acronym for emotional intelligence: recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate. Go Maggie. So we also asked all the staff members to attend those trainings, and we were successful in having a good amount of them trained, and I believe we will be continuing to have remaining staff trained with NX News. So then we also, part of it as well was we hired a diversity coordinator. You met her earlier, the amazing Gina Keller. And she is the diversity, equity, and integration coordinator. And her role is to kind of ensure that the diversity plan is being implemented and having the effects, the results that we wanted to. And Matt will talk more about the diversity plan later. We also have the SEGA grant, but I'm gonna leave that to Anita because I feel I should let her tell you about the SEGA grant. So whenever you're ready, let me know. But one of the things Anita also required as part of our initiative to have everybody be in the same place, is she actually did require that all of our schools have their own diversity and equity, diversity or equity committee. I keep saying, I apologize. And it didn't matter what you want to call it. If you want to call it diversity committee, equity committee, a lot of our schools came up with very creative names. The point is the same for all of them. You want to, there's a few things. You want to might exchange ideas and understanding with regard to race and culture or religion or socioeconomic status. You want to make kids feel comfortable. You want to encourage that, there's a strong support system for all the students, depending on, and as I said, we have a wide range of schools, as most districts do. So all the schools' needs are not the same. All the schools' demographics are not the same. All of the schools' priorities are not the same. So what we might be working on in a school in Sunset Park is different from what we might be working on in a school in Park Slope. So we acknowledge that. So there's not a one size fits all for these committees, but the goals are all the same. And I'm going to go back to the original, the original premise that no call should be coming saying that a District 15 school, a student suffered in any way, whether it was being called a name or being felt, that their hair was any type of way, they were too poor to be there, whatever the question is. That shouldn't be happening, and that's what we're working toward. So you're going to hear from Jennifer Spalding later from one of our great middle schools, but a lot of our schools are doing good things. So Gina's going to tell us a little bit about some of what our other schools are doing.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. So before we left for COVID, when we went out on quarantine, part of my responsibility, I was visiting the schools and during their diversity committees. And so just to highlight a couple of the ones that really, stuck out to me, PS 295, they have incorporated more culturally responsible teaching practices into their curriculum for Black History Month. They celebrate the many contributions and accomplishments of Black people in the fields of art, music, literature, science, social and political activism. So that was one of the things they were working on. MS51 has a great team called Duet, which is Diversity, Unity, and Equity team. And their mission was to play a vital role in shaping a school culture that promotes an inclusive, diverse, and equitable learning environment. So each one of them pretty much had their own mission statements. PS 29, theirs was called The Idea, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity for All. It was their committee, and they started hosting a weekly call for parents to talk about anti-racist parenting. So each school really came up with their own either mission statement, committees, and then they would all branch off from there. And they would have different events during the evenings and just for the community. And it was great to see that, these, the schools were implementing what the District 15 and what Anita's, mission was. Also, we had some schools who were struggling, and so I would work with them to try to at least get started. I felt that the easiest way to get started was just a book club. Just take a book and start reading about something in terms of, what might be going on in your community or at your school, something that you might see as an issue that could be discussed on a wider scale. So that's where we are.
Thank you. So like I said, all of our schools are at different places in terms of how deep they are into this work. We have schools like Jen's school who are deep into it, have been working on it and working in it hard. And we have other schools who are just starting and maybe didn't even realize that they needed it, because we all need it. So they may not have realized that. So just we do have a couple of tips, just do's and don'ts, depending on where you are, because sometimes, like I said, you might need a reminder. I think, so, a couple of do's and don'ts, I think, for creating fill in the blank, whatever you want to call it. We should give an award for the most creative name around diversity committees. So, the first thing you have to do is actually understand what your goal is, what your vision is, what your goal is, and actually have a statement to that effect, so that everybody's on the same page as to what you're working for, and you know what you're prioritizing, because it may not be the same for everybody. And along those lines, you shouldn't make assumptions that even though you're working at the same thing, doesn't mean you're working toward the same thing, even if you have a group of people who are like-minded. So to get on the same page, and it's fine to have different agendas, right? as long as they're honorable, it's fine if you're doing the work, and as long as you just know what everybody is there for. Along those lines, establishing norms and expectations, once again, so that everybody's on the same page. It was very important, and anybody who's on this call who was at the our very first equity meeting 4 years ago, we started with, we established some rules. This is a safe place, and there's going to be uncomfortable, that's my West Indian accent coming out, there's going to be some conversations that are going to cause discomfort, and you should expect that, because if you're not feeling that, then you're not really doing real work. Which brings me to potlucks. I love home cooked food as much as the next person, and I'm a foodie. Potlucks aren't enough, right? So if you have that one day in the year where you're like, oh, it's culture night, everybody brings something from their country where they're from, and that's it, and you don't do anything else, that's not sufficient. That's you should be doing a little bit more. It's a good start. It's definitely a good start, but you should be doing a little bit more. And I guess the biggest thing is not to substitute your judgment, but rather try to understand everybody's perspective. And that's even hard for me, because I've heard some things and I'm like, you are absolutely out of your mind, but you have to respect that and understand where they're coming from. And it should be a mutual understanding that that's how it's going to work. And in terms of obstacles and challenges, just, I alluded to it before, just, it's hard when you have a whole constituency that their voice isn't heard. And so it's hard because you're trying to advocate for them, but they have to advocate for themselves, and you're supposed to support them and not fight against them. You can't really speak for them, and that's a challenge because they have their own reasons why they would rather not speak so loudly. So those are some of the things I just wanted to share about what's happening in District 15. I was going to talk a lot more about the diversity plan, but I realized Brenda and parents, somebody's calling from my kid's school, but I'm going to leave that to Brenda and Matt. So if there are no questions, I think that's it. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, one more thing. Am I still screen sharing?
No.
Okay, well, I'll just say it. Our first Equity Congress meeting is Monday, November 9th from 4:30 to 6:30. Generally, because of time and space, we generally only have, 1 or 2 people per school, but it is going to be a Zoom meeting. So if anybody would be interested in joining our Equity Congress meeting, it is November 9th at 4:30. It will be a virtual meeting.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Thank you. And thank you, Gina. Thank you both for that really, really fantastic presentation of information. I'm just looking for Matthew's name on the list, but I don't see him. Maybe he's under.
Hello. Hi, Camille.
Oh, hey. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Joining us today.
Of course. So we're here to provide just a little bit of an update on the District 15 diversity plan. And I think at a really high level, the update is that from an admissions perspective, it's going very well. And I'm here with my colleague, Stuart Wade. Stuart, are you here? Stuart?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, sorry about that. I'm having some internet issues today.
No worries.
Good to be here.
But Stuart and I were hoping to share just a little bit of data from this past admissions cycle that shows that the goals of the diversity plan are really being furthered by having it in place. So I'm going to share my screen. So bear with me for a minute. Hi, sorry, when I tried to share, it kicked me out. Stuart, I'm going to try and share the table from my Dewey computer. While I do that, would you just want to kind of contextualize what it says?
Of course, I'm happy to.
Sure.
What we're gonna show you is we're gonna look at offers compared from starting from 2018, which is prior to the implementation of the plan, as you know, and then 2019, and then this past year is from fall 2020 admissions, and looking at by school, and just trying to show you the breakdown of how offers have shifted, and the percentage of offers that went to our students who are in our prioritized group, which, as you all know, was prioritized 52% of seats for FRLL and SDH students. I think at a high level, as Matt has already said, we're incredibly pleased with the results as we were in the first year. We've continued to see these shifts across the district in that our schools are, in general, all becoming more reflective of the district as a whole. So we're incredibly pleased to see that. You know, I think that one thing, again, this is offer, so this doesn't reflect actual enrollment, and so we can look at those trends later on in the year as we have a better sense of that. Obviously, this year is very unique for many reasons as well. But that is basically in general. Oh, Matt, I think you're emailing to see this in a second, so we might just 1 minute before we get into detail.
Stuart. Maggie, I actually just sent you an attachment. Would there be any way you could share that from your computer? Because I think ours aren't configured to share.
Sure, give me a couple of seconds.
Yep.
And I think one other thing I'll say, just kind of again, is context. As you all are probably aware too, I think, you know, one of the reasons we've seen so much success in the district has been that it was really like incredible outreach and incredible shifts in application behavior. You know, we've really seen that over the past couple of years, families are applying to more schools, more diverse schools, and really, you know, that has a significant impact as to, you know, why we're able to see this increased diversity across schools.
Totally. And one additional thing we wanted to mention, this past cycle, we had in place a sibling priority, which was the first time there was a sibling priority at the middle school level, you know, at the enrollment office. And that was based on community feedback and driven by, you know, community petitions. And the priority was for 5th grade applicants whose 6th grade siblings were at a middle school, as those were the students who had previously been admitted through the diversity plan. And what we saw based on an analysis of having this priority in place is that the sibling priority in no way undermined the diversity plan. We saw sort of the same positive outcomes across the board. So given that that was the case, we are going to be continuing the sibling priority in the upcoming admission cycle. This time it will be for current 5th graders who have an older sibling in 6th or 7th grade, as those are the students who were admitted under the diversity plan. So we have announced this to District 15 principals, and as the application process opens, we'll be sharing more information directly with families around that. Maggie, are you able to get that attachment downloaded by any chance? All right, Maggie's working on it. I do know there's also, I know some questions about the timeline around the admissions process currently. Given the focus on reopening safely, we are going to be having some more clarity on what the exact timeline will be in the near future. But we can say that the traditional early December deadline will no longer be the deadline. It will be a later deadline. And we are aware of the need to give families time to explore school options and complete a thoughtful application. So that is being taken into account in the decision-making process around the timeline. And as soon as there's clarity on that, hopefully in the near future, we'll be sharing that far and wide. Cool, so thanks Maggie for doing that. Sorry for the tech hiccups there. Stuart, do you want to talk through what these numbers mean, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'm happy to start, and please jump in, Matt.
Yeah.
I think you're just well versed in them. So I think, as I tried to preface earlier, what you're looking at here is a breakdown of offers from this past year for the 2020 fall admission cycle, and then comparing it to fall 2019, which, as you know, was the first year of the diversity plan, and then fall 2018, which was the year prior to that. And so really what we're seeing is we went from basically what's highlighted in green here are schools that fell within this target range, which as you'll recall was 40% to 75% of this representative body of, again, percent FRL, L, and STH students. And so if we went from prior to implementing the plan, there were only 4 schools in the district that fell within this range. In the first year of the plan, that moved up to 9. And then this past year, it's 8. And this is again, so we're really happy we're seeing this trend continue. You know, some of these schools are sort of on the cusp, and I think we'll see a little bit of shift when we look at enrollment as well. So again, this represents offers, but overall, super happy to see this this trend going in, I think, the direction that we had all hoped.
Yeah, and just to kind of map out what Stuart's saying with the single school, if you look at the top row there, MS51, you'll see all the way on the right, before the diversity plan, 33%, about a third of kids getting offers to that school were high need. And then in the past 2 years, that number has been 56 and 57%. So if you sort of just like skim down and look at the schools here, I think the big takeaway is that because of the diversity plan, District 15 middle schools are reflective of the district much more than they were before the diversity plan, which I think is very aligned with our goals and the goals of the diversity plan. So I think Camille, Anita, Maggie, Gina, that was sort of the data we were hoping to share. Is there any kind of key things missing that we should speak to, or any kind of key questions around this stuff?
You brought more than I was expecting. So much. I wasn't expecting anything like this.
No.
So that's fantastic. And, you know, I think our other CEC members would probably want to hear more about this at another meeting. So I would invite you both to come.
We'd love to.
Sooner than later, hopefully.
Yeah.
And share that information. You know, since we have you on the call, could you share any information that you have about how this year's, well, obviously parents can't go into schools. So in previous years, there were some video options for parents to see. Like, what would you suggest would be the best ways for families to find out about what's going on in the school?
It's a great
Camille,
question.
I think it would be helpful if I answered that. Hi. So what we have asked all of our middle school principals to do is to create a video tour of each school. And they will also be having one virtual meeting where not only will they play the video, but they will answer questions. They will record the meeting, and then they can post it on their website with the video. We will be posting all the videos on our website with all the information. And also we are asking schools to work together to create a calendar so that their virtual meetings are not on the same night, and therefore parents can go to as many as they wish to attend. So that will give them an option of virtually touring as many schools as they wish. The fact that it is going to be linked means that people can tour the schools at the convenience of their time frame. And so these are silver linings to a cloud, we think.
Just to build off Anita, we're also asking all middle schools, not just District 15 middle schools, for the links to these events, and we're putting them directly in the My Schools directory and in the application. So as families are going through the application, they'll have those links right in front of them as they explore.
Okay, great. That's really great news. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Matthew and Stuart, and thank you, Anita, for that quick update. So at this time, I'd like to hand the floor over to Brenda Diaz, our District 15 Family Support Coordinator, and Brooklyn North's Instructional Lead, Lee, I'm going to mispronounce this, Sung Jin, but we lovingly call her TJ. And then I want to be attentive to the time because we have only 20 more minutes left, and really looking forward to seeing Principal Spalding's presentation as well. So thank you so much. Brenda, do you have privileges for the host?
Can you see the screen that I share?
Yes.
Yes.
We can see it.
Okay, will do. So thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Zongjing Li. Together with Brenda, in the next few minutes, we are just gonna talk a little bit about what New York City Department of Education have been doing to support cultural diversity. Earlier, Camille also shared that NYU has some kind of curriculum, and Department of Education, we also have very good curriculum as well. And all the information is here in this website. So we know we have very limited time, but in the future, if you have any question after our presentation, please feel free to reach out. And also Brooklyn North, my colleague, also provide lots of professional learning on this topic as well. So you might wanted to know why Department of Education wanted to focus on culturally responsive, sustaining education, all right? So that's because studies already shown that students that exposed to this education, CRSE, are more active in class, and they graduate more often with better grade, and their self-esteem improve, and they become better citizens. So since the data already show it is so positive, and that's why Department of Education, together with New York State Department of Education, we focus heavily on promoting culturally responsive, sustaining education framework. So next, Brenda is gonna give us a definition of what CRSE is.
Hi, thank you for having us. The New York State Education Department defines culturally responsive sustaining education as grounded in a cultural view of learning and human development in which multiple expressions of diversity, for example, race, social class, gender, language, sexual orientation, nationality, religion, and ability are recognized as regarded as assets for teaching and learning. TJ will talk to you now about the Department of Education's approach to culturally responsive sustaining education.
So Department of Education have the following expectation for all the school and all the district. So we must see the value and the background views and the needs of all students. And we need to be aware of past and present form of any bias or any oppressions. Okay, we need to identify, stop practice that boosts historically advantaged group that the expenses of marginalized students, and we need to use teaching methods that are challenging but honor students' diversity. We need to employ staff that with high expectation for all students, and we need to build strong connection with students, understand their life, backgrounds, and identity. Build partnership with family and communities, and create emotional safe space and foster trust among students. Okay, so these are the expectations from Department of Education. Next, Brenda is going to talk about how Department of Education engage in this work. You're muted, Brenda. You are muted.
Brenda, you're muted. Very good.
So engaging in the work of the CRSE, this is pretty straightforward. I also don't like reading from the PowerPoint, but these are pretty straightforward, and these are just levels requiring that the schools and districts follow them. They value and affirm the varied experiences, perspectives, and needs that students bring into the classroom. They foster critical consciousness about historical and contemporary forms of bias and oppression. They also identify and interrupt policies and practices that center on historically advantaged social cultural groups and lead to predictable outcomes of success or failure for historically marginalized students. They also use curricula and pedagogy that are academically challenging, honor and reflect students' diversity. They improve classroom and institutional practice through a mindset of high expectations for all students and deep examination and knowledge of one's personal beliefs, assumptions, experiences, and identities through ongoing professional learning and support. They build strong connections and relationships with students, which requires understanding their lives, their backgrounds, and identities. They develop close partnerships with families and communities. They develop restorative practices in schools, including using restorative justice as a response to harm, fostering trusting relationships among students, creating emotional safe spaces that recognize and nurture students' identities, and giving students a sense of ownership and belonging in a school. TJ will now talk to you about the 4 principles of culturally responsive sustaining education.
Yeah, so the expectation from Department of Education and how we engage all the students are grounded on these 4 principles. It's very important that we have the welcoming and affirming environment, and we have high expectations, rigorous instruction for all students, and inclusive curriculum and assessment, this is for equity, and ongoing professional learning. So these are the 4 principles of culturally responsive sustaining education, and is non-negotiable for all our schools. So next, Brenda's gonna talk about how Department of Education, in terms of addressing all different cultural background, all different languages, how do we provide access to all the families and students?
So if you notice in the PowerPoint, we are sharing with you the DOE language access. The link above will give you information, a host of information for parents on this link, and it's translated overview of remote learning, family guide to remote learning, get an overview of what the New York City Department of Education has done in response to COVID-19 and remote learning, including getting devices, free meals, remote learning and technical support, getting in touch with your school and district as well.
And the languages that we provide are the following 10 languages, and all the links are here. So after the meeting, I will make sure this PowerPoint is available to all the participants so that you can share the English, Spanish, Chinese, or Russian, Urdu. All these languages is already translated. And if the language is not translated, it's not one of the 10 languages, Department of Education also has a translation unit. Their phone number is listed here. The email is listed here. Basically, if you are one of the low incidence language like Tibetan or Swahili from Africa, all these languages, if you have the need to translate it, then you need to contact the translation unit. DOE will do everything they can to meet the need of the families.
Right, and I just want to piggyback a little bit about this. As Maggie stated before, I am the person for the district who gets all the parents' concerns or complaints or anything like that. And one of the things that we really stress is that we want to make sure that every parent gets heard, and that we provide them with the information they need, and that we hear what they have to say. And one of those ways is by using the language access. And sometimes many parents call me and they say, oh, I don't speak English. I definitely contact the translation unit. I listen to what they have to say. And I must say that, and one of the good things that I have to say is that I never have received a complaint from one of our schools where a parent didn't get information because of a language barrier. I do receive it from other districts, but never from District 15. And we are able to help those parents as well.
So this is our presentation on supporting how we support culturally diverse education, focused on culturally responsive, sustaining education. And again, from my office, Brooklyn North Borough Office, we provide a lot of PR on this topic. If you need any information, I'm happy to send it to you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, TJ. Thank you, Maggie. It's really great to have you here. It's wonderful that we have such really caring and engaged people working in Brooklyn North and District 15. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I just want to give a shout out to Executive Superintendent Karen Watts. I saw her name in the participant list. Thank you so much for being here. At this time, I am thrilled to hand the floor over to Principal Jennifer Spalding from MS 821. Really looking forward to your presentation. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Camille. It's nice to see you. Can everyone see my screen?
We can see you.
Excellent. All right. So this whole meeting is about cultural diversity, and I just really wanted to talk about the teaching and learning side of this. Brenda, and the presentation just before me was so awesome. There was a lot of great information in there. So it allows me to skip over some of my early slides. But I did just want to say, you know, sometimes we think of culture as an iceberg, that there's things we see on top and then there's all this other stuff underneath. And really where we've been working at Sunset Park Prep for a long time is thinking about culture more as a tree with all of these different roots and branches and trunks that move in a lot of different ways. So there are things that we see, there are things that are hidden and sometimes discussed, there are things that are unseen and rarely discussed. And what we've been working on as a staff is really digging to that stuff that is less seen and less discussed, and really trying to bring that to the surface as we talk about, you know, culturally responsive pedagogy at Sunset Park Prep. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions about what culturally relevant curriculum and culturally responsive teaching is about is that we think it's just about race and ethnicity. And it's actually about so much more than that. It's of course about that, but also about cultural backgrounds. It's about interests. It's about our learning preferences and needs. It's about our lived experience. All of these pieces come into play when we're talking about how to give students access to what we're trying to teach and how to build these really wonderful points of access for students into the school community. So I love this quote. I think it's really powerful. It's by Zaretta Hammond, and she is an author that we've read as a school staff during our summer reading. And we've used her book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, as a basis of some of the work that we've done in our school. To me, the part that really jumps out is this last sentence, which is, in reality, culturally responsive teaching is less about using racial pride as a motivator and more about mimicking students' cultural learning styles and tools. So with that in mind and thinking about that, I also want to show you just really briefly this Barbara Escudero quote. Again, very powerful. And just the piece that I want to highlight for us is that culturally responsive teaching focuses on academic and personal success of students as individuals and as a collective, by ensuring students engage in academically rigorous curriculum and learning. And this is so in line with what we just heard about in the previous presentation. And this is where we've really centered our work as a school. So out of the Zaretta Hammond book is this really great graph on dimensions of equity. So a lot of times it's easy, and this is where we started as a school. We lived in kind of this multicultural education place where we celebrated diversity, and as Maggie said, we had great potlucks, and we really enjoyed talking about the different things that different cultures and races and ethnicities brought to the table. But there wasn't a lot of deep critical thinking about what our practices were lending themselves to versus what we were celebrating. So it felt very surface. So as we moved out of multicultural education into a more social justice education place, we really talked about the political context and kind of the deepening social conscious of our students and of our teachers. And we spent time in this place where we were really trying to figure out, like, how do we interrupt and disrupt unequal practices at our school. And ultimately, like where we are still working and continuing to strive is to this place of culturally responsive pedagogy, where it's really about maximizing the learning that all students are getting and creating this environment that allows students to really play on their strengths and play on what they know, and that there is a place for all of the things that students bring to the table at our school. So that has been challenging. It's a constant, work in progress, but it's a really important place to be. So I wanted to share just a few kind of practical things that we've done so far over the last, probably 8 years to really try to build this practice. And sorry, you hear my radio in the background. You see I'm wearing a scarf because it's cold with all the windows open, but here we are, guys, here we are. So 3 things we've really worked on for equity at Prep is we've worked on building and shifting mindsets in adults. I think sometimes this seems pretty straightforward, but this is a process, a long process. We are playing the long game as we build these mindsets and continue to shift them. We've also tried to make equity visible in classrooms, hallways, after-school clubs in really big and also really small ways. And we want to make sure equity is part of the curriculum, lessons, and our daily life at school. So I would say the biggest tip, and this is pretty obvious, but the biggest tip is you got to spend a lot of time talking about equity to make this be something that is entrenched in your school environment. So some specific examples of this, in terms of building and shifting mindsets in adults, we've definitely talked about it. We've built teams around it. We've studied it. We've read about it. And this is part of our daily practice, and certainly a focus that we have year round. We've had the great pleasure of having Cornelius Miner, who has been a staff developer for us for the last almost 11 years at Prep. We've really shifted a lot of the work that he's done with the Miner Collective to make it all about racial equity at school. So our data teams study different figures and facts that make us believe that things might be inequitable. We work to try to remedy that. We bring a lot of students to the table at that. But really, this is about helping adults kind of change their minds here. We're so lucky to have District 15 and the Equity Congress and all of the work that District 15 is doing around this. And then also the DOE. The implicit bias training that all staff had to undergo was really valuable. And it was a continuation of a lot of the work that we've done, but is certainly helping people shift their mindsets around what this looks like. I'm going to skip this slide, but really it is about changing our thinking from one way to another way. And that kind of change takes time, but is also so urgent that we have to continue working on that. I want to talk, the other piece is how we make it visible in classrooms, of course. So it is, of course, about celebration and making visible many different cultures. One of the things that has really changed the way we talk about race and ethnicity and identity with students is affinity groups and identity-based clubs. We've had clubs in this kind of realm for probably the last 6 years. Some of them have been just completely revolutionary in terms of the way that students see themselves and the way they see their teachers and the way that they want to continue this work with us. So we have Black Student Union, which this year has been renamed as the Black Lives Matter at Prep Club. We have PRISM, which is an LGBTQI organization that's really an amazing, amazingly student-led group. And one of my favorite events they've done is they did a gay pride parade in our hallways. And it was just the most moving thing you could imagine. Short story about this, I think when students brought up the idea to teachers, teachers' immediate reaction was like, oh my goodness, this sounds so scary. Thinking back to their own middle school experiences and high school experiences and worrying that as kids marched through the hallway, students would jeer and inappropriate things would be said. And there was just a lot of nerves around that. And with working with students and with them working with classrooms to have this amazing parade, it really totally revolutionized the way I think teachers saw students and their ability to really affect change and their ability to bring other people in. It was an incredible thing. So with that, I think that's all of these pieces have caused us to examine our school's culture and our tone and our ability to reach students of all backgrounds and languages. I think a big shift for us probably 7 years ago was from kind of this idea of disciplining and policing to this idea of like mindfulness and building community connections and really making sure our restorative practices were at the center of everything that we do, which is where we're at now. And I feel really good about that piece of it. And I also would say just a big note is our hiring practices. So we do something really unique. We hire by committee. It's a big committee. We generated the questions that we ask candidates from our school values. So the questions are made to help us see what our staff members, our potential staff members might be bringing to the table. And we also have a really incredible student panel that does their own process with the teachers, that they read an article together and then the potential teacher kind of talks about that article with them. And we have students weigh in on how they felt during that conversation, the things they liked about that conversation, the qualities that they admired in that teacher in that moment. So it's allowed us to incorporate student voice into our hiring. And our staff is incredibly diverse and has been incredibly diverse, but this has made it even more student involved, but also I think students feel very empowered with having a say as to who their teachers are going to be. And we found that it's led to a lot of really cool representation also on our staff. And then I think the last piece is probably the piece that people talk about most, which is just in curriculum and daily lessons. So we really try to focus on relevance and engagement. We try to think thematically. We really work hard to make sure that all kinds of people are visible and validated in our classrooms. This is my favorite thing that we do is social issues book clubs. So our libraries are really, really rich with books from all different places. But our social issue book clubs are just really powerful opportunities for students who are coming from areas all across the district to read a common text and dig deeply into it and talk about the issues that exist in that book. And what we're finding is it allows for then those conversations to spread beyond the classroom. So that's been really important for us. And just the last thing, if there's any teachers on the call, that I will say is just, culturally responsive teaching is not just about ethnicity and race, but it's about making education fun and accessible. And 3 ways that we try to do it are gamifying it, making it social, and storifying it, which is really great. So just a quick window into what we have going on at Sunset Park Prep and the work that we've been doing on this. It's a constant and continual journey. And so much of the work that District 15 is they're doing has helped us move along on that path. And our equity team has been such a valuable piece of this as well. So Camille, thank you for letting me share. And it was a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Principal Spalding. It is our great pleasure to have you. Thank you for sharing your best practices and your student and staff stories. You all are doing fantastic work at MS 821. It's just really wonderful to know that these things are happening in our district and that everybody on the call, everyone is always so generous with their time and sharing feedback, trying to help others. I'm just so proud to be a part of this district. Thank you to Anita and Executive Superintendent Watts. We have incredible leaders in this district, and I can't thank you all enough. I just want to speak about what Principal Spalding was saying about changing our thinking, and our last DEI session was actually about redirection and our ability to change patterns. So our videos are posted on the cecd15.org website. If anybody wants to go back and review those, they're available. We are approaching our session 6 out of 8, which is going to be on November 16th, and we're going to be discussing appropriate settings and cooperative learning. I hope everybody will be able to join us. Don't forget, we have a family cooking workshop tonight at 5:15. I will just drop that in the chat so that anybody who wants to join, feel free to join. That's the RSVP link, and we'll send you the link to the actual session. So again, thank you so much to everybody who came to speak today. Thank you to our participants on the call, and we'll look forward to seeing you all another time. So stay safe and enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.